simply adding more people isn't a sustainable solution. Today it's really not about efficiency, it's about competitiveness and mission advantage. What's really kept me engaged is mission consequence. In national security, as you can imagine, failure is an abstract idea, it's immediate and real. Fragmentation is really the common denominator, and it's what's slowing our responses down in real time. If your data's not connected, your risk isn't either, and you're managing pieces instead of the whole. I think the future is very bright, and we've just begun to tap our thinking about how to use some of these emerging technologies like AI or quantum and solving problems that you never thought you could solve. Because you didn't think of them as problems, you just thought them as facts of life. And no, they're no longer facts of life. You actually have positive control over changing those situations.
Welcome to a new episode of Federal Market Frontlines, brought to you by TechnoMile. I'm your host, Tom Temin. We explore timely issues affecting and shaping the federal market for technology and services, a market that's in constant flux. Today we're talking to Don Blersch, a man with many titles and lots of experience in the national security field. That includes more than 35 years in the federal government with the CIA, National Reconnaissance Office, the ODNI, and the State Department. Among current duties, Don is a TechnoMile advisory board member, and our topic today is the innovation imperative and why neither the government nor its industry partners can afford to go slow here. Don Blersch, good to have you with us.
Yes, thank you, Tom. It's good to be here.
All right, let's talk with what has kept you focused for so many years on where national security, technology, policy kind of interact and intersect. What's going on there and what's kept you so engaged in that field?
What's really kept me engaged is mission consequence. In national security, as you can imagine, failure is an abstract idea. It's immediate and real. So early in my career on the technology side, I realized that technology alone doesn't solve problems. It's how you integrate the technology into mission operations that really drives impact. So across, as you mentioned, the ODNI, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, the Missile Defense Agency, CIA, NRO, State Department, some other agencies, I consistently worked in terms of my drive and focus at the intersection of where policy, technology, and operations converge. And it naturally led me along the way to really a focus on mission assurance, reducing risk, building trust, and ensuring the systems and often overlooked the people perform when it matters most. So I've always been focused on where technology changes the mission outcome, not just when it just exists for its own sake.
And what's going on now? I mean, what are some of the significant shifts in the market? We commonly hear, well, the government mostly buys services now, whereas it used to buy hardware, in some of these mission areas. But it's more than that going on, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think the defining shift really, when you step back from sort of that tactical overlay, is really a gap that exists now, I see fundamentally across the U.S. government between the speed of emerging threats and the speed of institutional response. Threats, whether they be cyber, insider threats, supply chain, are evolving in real time and oftentimes in exponential ways. And many of the systems and processes, and unfortunately the people trained in them, are built for a much slower era. So, the large primes, for instance, feel the complexity that this engenders at scale. Smaller companies, feel it's a barrier due to entry. So, that the U.S. federal government is lacking being able to take full advantage of a lot of those smaller, very innovative companies, and especially due to the compliance overhead. When you're a large prime, you have lots and lots of people and that you can throw at a lot of these compliance issues. Although that doesn't scale very well, small companies don't even have a chance. So both really dealing with the same issue: fragmented systems, disconnected data, overwhelming compliance and other factors put on them, rightly so in terms of security overlays, and it limits visibility and slow decision making, just kills us in the decision making space. So I think overall, just to recap, fragmentation is really the common denominator, and it's what's slowing our responses down in real time.
Especially, I guess, as artificial intelligence come in, quantum computing suddenly is all the talk now because it's getting closer and closer, and that intersects with cybersecurity. And so there are many policies. We have quantum policies, we have cyber policies, we have AI policies. That must be making that whole compliance picture, aside from the mission assurance piece itself, but the compliance, a really big challenge now because of the convergence of these suddenly exploding technologies, you might say.
I think in many ways, as you just pointed out, we've already crossed that point. The scale and complexity of requirements, CMMC, insider threat, supply chain risk, the technologies you're offering up that actually will allow us to get after some of that stuff. But we're way beyond manual processes and the old way of doing business to handle all these aspects effectively. So simply adding more people isn't a sustainable solution. AI and automation, I think shift the model from periodic reactive compliance to continuous proactive risk management. We really have to change the frame. It's not just compliance, it's actually proactive risk management. So, one thing that's compelling about TechnoMile and SIMS that intrigued me in terms of coming on the advisory board is the combination of their ability to centralize data, automate workflows, and provide real-time visibility across both the contract obligations and the security posture. I think in a very innovative way that allows organizations to scale intelligently without actually scaling overhead at the same rate. You really want to bend that curve. You really want to scale your processes at scale, but then not have to come on with the overwhelming burden that traditional approaches engender. So, today it's really not about efficiency. It's about, competitiveness and mission advantage. So, AI, quantum, it's really not about efficiency anymore. It's about making compliance and risk management truly scalable.
Sure, and you mentioned the innovation going on in the contractor field to automate some of these things, do it without growing the number of people, which, as you mentioned, doesn't scale very well. Government, is often tagged with not being innovative or being resistant to innovation, notwithstanding that the government of today looks very different from the government of 20, 30, 40, even 50 years ago. But how can you break that inertia so that government makes innovation, let's say, a default mode?
There's a tendency not to empower people to improve the system. So what I found, separate than maybe a corporate experience, was the way I was able to be successful in the government in terms of innovating was really focusing not on sweeping transformation, but about targeted improvements to remove friction points. So whether it was a diplomatic security, where I oversaw re-engineering the security clearance process, using more of a traditional Lean Six Sigma, focusing on workflow, mission defense or missile defense agency, where we actually embedded security into the engineering life cycle, shifting from reactive to proactive. So the mission managers in the programs themselves, security was a fundamental component, which was later adopted across the DoD as a deliver uncompromised kind of a concept. And then when you have the engineers involved, they actually understand why you have those security protocols, so that when you do field a weapon system or a defensive system, it's already compromised and the adversary already knows how to defeat it. Other ones as mundane sounding as like at the Office of Director of National Intelligence, re-architecting the process for which we drafted requirements for major systems acquisitions separate from the DoD's process, given the unique scale and size of the IC acquisitions, which tend to be a much smaller scale in terms of number of articles built, and the speed at which you need to improve them. We reduce bureaucratic drag, streamlined acquisition, but overall, the pattern's consistent. I mean, you got to reduce friction, you have to integrate early, you have to deliver measurable results, and really build trust, and that ultimately shifts culture. And so I think, when I see programs being proposed that are looking to change culture through mandates, sweeping overarching change, where everything is upended. Really what you want to do is you want to prove better processes work. I can get into that a little more detail in terms of focusing on pieces, showing results, getting the buy-in, allowing your staff to actually come up with ideas, because they're the ones dealing with this system every day and know how to, and what friction points are hindering them from accomplishing their mission. So really that's all about the philosophy of how to really change things, particularly in government.
Yeah, a theme that I'm hearing is the idea of integration in all of this, and too often security, data, compliance, processing, and so forth, contracts all live in separate, I guess they used to call them stovepipe systems. And that's really where some of the biggest risks emerge, fair to say?
Yeah, I actually, stovepipes is a very good term of art. Cylinders of excellence is another one. People say with a little tongue in cheek. But yeah, the biggest risk is fragmentation. That's what you see. And I walked into and lived, my life experience within the government, and even now consulting and advising and keeping to try and improve systems. But yeah, critical data essentially is spread, and this is even in the corporate culture, critical data is spread across systems that don't talk to each other. So contracts are in one place, compliance workflows are in another, personal security data is elsewhere, sometimes in several places, and even in security, they're not integrated. And that just creates operational blind spots. So what's the result? The results are delayed decisions, inconsistent compliance, haphazard exposure to insider risks, supply chain risks, essentially always playing catch up. And so what you really need to do as an organization is you need to unify your operational picture. And the way you do that, again, I'll just look at the TechnoMile and SIMS combined capability. Is TechnoMile provides, for instance, from a pipeline to execution visibility across, the full contract lifecycle. Coupled with SIMS's capability to do a centralized system of record for all personal insider risk and other security platforms. It gives senior decision makers capabilities that are connected, and that you can move from managing risks in silos, as you referred to really for the first time managing it as an integrated system. So, to say it another way, if your data is not connected, your risk isn't either, and you're managing pieces instead of the whole. And what you really need to focus on today more than ever is focusing on the whole picture at once with a combined operational picture.
And that picture can get pretty big, and we hear a lot of companies talk about a single pane of glass and integrating all of these different data sources for decision makers. But if that pane of glass is the size of a football stadium and it's covered with millions and millions of pictures and data feeds, you still have the problem that this all outweighs human capacity to deal with it. So when does compliance outpace human scalability? I think you're saying it already has. And can the AI solution, is that one of the answers, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think applied smartly, the AI and other automated techniques, you have to go that way because you simply can't scale. And then all the changes in the compliance standards as rewrites and other intelligence community directives, other fiducial responsibilities with compliance, you have integrated into that HIPAA type things and environmental pieces. You just can't keep track of it all. And the other thing is AI. AI is going to find and help you find with the right tools areas where you're out of compliance and you didn't even realize it, let alone, and not for any due diligence line, but just because when these things are combined together, they create situations where you are suddenly out of compliance in one area, even though if you looked at it through a stepwise fashion, you may never trip over that. And it also keeps you ahead of the curve and anticipating how you can orchestrate your system so that you can keep in compliance even as the government changes their compliance standards or industry moves to other standards.
I read many years ago once a review of a interstate truck, a big semi truck. And one of the innovations this manufacturer did, this was a long time ago, was all of the instruments were designed so that, and these trucks had a lot of instruments, when everything was normal, they all pointed in the same direction. So it was easy for the driver to see an exception when something was pointed in the wrong direction. So in some sense, you're saying the AI on top of all of these disparate systems that we've now integrated still have to feed up, let's say, to the human operator only the exceptions so that they can deal with those. And if the exceptions get overwhelming, then you need a degree of automation to fix some of those things so that they get unaccepted without human intervention. Does that sound like the picture of where we're going?
I think human intervention will always be a key to all of this. In terms of what I like with that analogy that you just gave is AI is performing at scales that were unmanageable what that old analog kind of system was attempting to do, which is AI is not, you're just not going to turn it loose on your corporate compliance or your security apparatus and have it think for you. But what it can do is it can take terabytes of data that you would never be able to actually sift through and find, and it can point you to things that you as a security officer or a compliance officer or even as a new business capture manager need to look at. So AI is really like a supercharged assistant that's going to help you move faster, help you find rabbit holes you're going down that have led to outcomes in the past that aren't favorable. And it's going to learn interactively so that you just keep getting better at it. So I think it's really the symbiotic nature of the AI properly applied to this data, really empowering the analyst or the security officer, compliance officer to be able to function in this environment that they're all just drowned. And again, you can't scale by hiring hundreds and thousands of people to try to do this because one, they couldn't keep up, and then there's not that communication between them. It'll just all break down, and then you won't have any compliance, any real security. You'll have the illusion of security, but you really will be vulnerable at almost every level.
And in this context that you've described of cultural change and of trying to scale things without adding to the scale of human beings and this whole AI picture that's helping, how does AI properly come into something in a sensitive organization like, say, the Missile Defense Agency, not to pick on them, but you mentioned them, or any of these other high-value mission types of agencies. Does this come in at the grassroots level where the operators who are dealing with this stuff day to day say, you know what, if we could tie these things together and add this algorithm, that would help me and I could do 10 times more? Or does it come from the top in saying we're going to adopt AI and let's try to do it at an enterprise scale? Or do they meet in the middle maybe?
Yeah, I think it's both the top-down and bottom-up approach. The traditional approach to innovation that I mentioned, really there's just practical steps, and adoption of AI is similar to this in terms of tools, and you'll see this with a number of tools that are being deployed across companies, individual analyst tools that I'm talking about, but you engage the end users early. You need to, like I said, break down those stovepipes, figure out where the data, it's all about the data. So before you put an AI layer on anything, you need to make sure that your data, they call it conditioned, so that it can be merged and sorted through, protected, and you can break down those silos so that tools like AI can find connections, much like in the medical industry now, where in the different silos of the different fields of medicine, doctors for years have been exploring cures, but now that AI is being applied to those separate stovepipes, if you will, it's coming up with treatments that no one doctor, even area of medicine would have found, because they're not looking at what's going on in the other fields of medicine. So very similar in a corporate or government standpoint there. And you also need to iterate quickly. People talk about accepting failure. If something doesn't work, you can move on, learn from it, adopt changes at the small scale that you know that you have high confidence will be able to scale. One thing we do in government a lot is adopt at a very tactical level a change. It works really great, but then it's not scalable. So again, AI allows you to kind of think through those things, and then really always have to align with mission performance. So it's really not about chasing the buzzword, quantum or AI, or it's really about aligning the people and the processes and the tools, which include the ones that you mentioned, around mission outcomes. So again, I found you can get a tremendous amount of integration organically, and also without a lot of injection of resources by doing that bottoms-up approach. But even at the bottoms-up approach, folks see things tactically. So you do need that top-down. You've got now some of the bigger capabilities coming on. Senior leadership needs to engage, understand what those can do, what they can't do. And with that marriage of the mission operations tactical level, architect a system that, again, bites into those, doesn't try to change everything at once, but you stepwise learn and you focus on constantly improving along your lines of mission as you go. And it's not over once you're done once. It's adaptability, flow, and really just continuously improving. And as different techniques in AI improve, applying those and never sitting on your laurels, basically, is what you need to do.
And that brings up a question that sounds arcane, but since we're in the federal and information technology market, I guess we can be a little bit arcane. But with people, say, on the line or even at the mission level, introducing, say, AI to improve a process, to improve a system, to improve compliance, you have the issue of what is a legitimate system of record, in the government context, and also then that leads to the question of authority to operate ATO, which comes up in a lot of these discussions. Yeah, we can devise a way to enable improvement and innovation in this particular system and process, but does that result in a new system that takes ATO approval, and does it need to become a system of record? That kind of question is where I think a lot of innovation may sometimes fail or just be stillborn because of those arcane issues that actually are pretty important in the government context.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very topical issue. Actually, a lot of companies are dealing with right now, and we're actually even dealing it in a separate capacity as I serve as the chair of the Security Policy Reform Council for the Intelligence and National Security Alliance. A lot of that goes back to when you unpack it, there are technologies, and what you're talking about are capabilities that are coming on that we need to adopt. But some of the old paradigms for how those technologies are evaluated, it just doesn't work. Square peg, round hole kind of situation. The old ATO model was really looking at lines of code and a system where you had a definitely defined phase iteration of it. And so the new ATO piece, it has to be, it's right now, it's a big discussion of relook. I think a lot of those old definitions for ATO are really antiquated, and we need to work on the industry side with government to help define what really makes sense in the context of AI. A lot of very strategic level parameters around its operation, human in the loop for injection points, ensuring ethical AI. You don't have you eliminate bias to the large extent that you can, or that you're at least aware of where the thing can be biased. Continually training it, getting rid of the hallucinations. But if you just apply, it would be like applying analog rules back in the 40s or 50s to a digital age of the 80s or 90s. I think that's right now, and that's really not a technology problem. That's a policy problem. So I would think the innovation that I would be pushing for in the I am pushing for in the forums that I engage in are really more on the policy front to better align our current policies with the emerging technology that we desperately need to adopt for our national security and national defense.
Sure. And so then is there a model, I guess the modern word is playbook. We've had playbooks for this, that, and the other. For innovation adoption, is there a roadmap? You can pick your cliche, but is there a way that can be replicated across agencies to achieve this type of innovation, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly guides out there. People are trying to attack this from a policy standpoint, or even just, hey, until the policies change, this is what we're stuck with. So, I wouldn't recommend any one in particular, but there's a large community of interest now that's, I think, publishing and trying to help out companies understand those pieces. But I would get back more to the fundamental. That's all sort of the immediate fight, and that ebbs and flows day to day. But really, as a senior leader, what I would advocate is from the most effective organizations, when I stand back and look at that, both in the private sector and in the government, are those that engage their users early. They do break down those silos that we've discussed, and they iterate quickly. They look at things, they move on, they try to fix something, but they don't stand and go back how to make it better. And you're really just constantly trying to align all of those aspects: your security, compliance, technology with the mission. Is it helping progress the mission and mission performance? So it's not just about chasing. It isn't about actually chasing technology at all. It's about aligning the people, processes, and tools to mission outcomes. So you should always measure: is what we're doing going to improve the mission outcome? In some corporate settings, the ROI, the effectiveness is working down our liability, and also aligning. The speed of adaptability, will if you have that alignment, the speed of adaptability will flow naturally. So, I found in this context, organizations that move fastest aren't the most advanced. I'm getting back to my theme about the difference. It's really the organizations that are the most aligned. And so these new technologies will be coming out. They have their own unique challenges, whether it's on the technology policy front, and you just need to be on top of that and stay aligned across the mission to stay ahead of it and to just keep continuously working the problem.
Right, so thinking about what it is you want to do as an organization or as a function is what you really need to keep doing, and the technology choices will become obvious at that moment. That's different from saying, oh, how can we take this technology in because everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, that's probably the worst thing you want to do, is just to adopt something because everybody else is jumping onto it. And as you imply, we're getting away from the old compliance. The government would come out with a new version of security manual, and all we have to do is just live up to that minimum, and we don't have to think about it because we don't have to really update it until they update the next one, which isn't going to happen for 7 years. Things are moving much faster than that, and not only for compliance with the government, but also just protection of your own industrial secrets, intellectual property, fiducial responsibilities to shareholders. You need this is now an active, moving game where you need to stay on top of things and keep abreast of what tools and offerings are out there that can actually help you solve the problems that you need to solve, either internally or externally, and meeting your customers' expectations or your own internal processes. And like I said, it's having a team focused on doing that continuously, incrementally, and disruptively at times when need be is really where you need to be.
And the benefit of that approach is when it comes time to acquire the service or technology you need, your requirements are going to be a lot sharper and a lot closer on the mark, and then maybe in that way you'll speed up the acquisition anyhow.
Yeah, I think that's right. The better that even goes on the government side. Crisp requirements are always a good way to start. especially a major acquisition. But the more focused you are on that, to know what you're buying. You just walk into a car dealership with no idea of what you want to buy, you're going to get whatever they happen to want to sell you off the lot. A lot of times, companies are trying to be responsive to you, but if you don't know what you want, it's very hard for them to be able to give you what you need, and also for you to have any idea how to implement it internally to your company so it'll have any kind of positive impact. And that's actually very corrosive, because that destroys trust. It tells your folks that, well, okay, here we go again, and they shut down, and you can actually have a very debilitating cycle built into your company if you don't approach this correctly. So it is definitely mission critical to get this right.
Well, you've been at this a long time. You've seen a lot. Now you're in the business of giving advice, you might say. What is your best advice for leadership to make sure that they understand they need to move faster, and how to go about actually moving faster?
I think, as I had said before, it's really you have to have your eyes and ears open, engage users. You have to really empower your staff, and that's at all levels, from the lowest level on up, to really point out things that can be improved, to give them the resources or the encouragement to improve them, even if it's just internal changes in their own processes or how they work across the aisle with another part of the company. Not always just chasing new technologies, but again, really aligning. It's all based on the people and the functions and the processes and tools, and the tools will come as a result of that. And really just getting down to your mission outcomes. I think a lot of times people lose track of what the real mission is, and what is it that the government keeps coming back to us to get our expertise or our hardware or our new offerings, and then how do we communicate back to them so that they know that they got what that not only they asked for, but here is a much better conversation about, given where you are and your mission, this is what we think you need. Those kind of levels of trust build up and offer all sorts of other opportunities for companies in terms of making inroads in this area.
Sure, and our contracting base, our defense industrial supply base, the government itself, both on the civilian and on the military side, are stressed right now. We're stressed politically, we're stressed militarily at the moment as we speak, fiscally, and on so many fronts. Are you optimistic we'll get through it?
Yeah, I'm an optimistic realist, I think. It's tough, but that's, we've risen to greater challenges in the past. You just need to stay focused on the mission and keep your head down, up, partner. It's all based on trust and partnering. Ideas can change the world, so if you have a good one, keep pushing it. And yeah, I think what we're going through right now, we've gone through other technology disruption cycles and waves, and it always seems very ominous in the midst of the fight. But when you look back at the increases in productivity and the strides we've made across, whether you name it, communications or medicine, science, I think the future is very bright, and we've just begun to tap our thinking about how to use some of these emerging technologies like AI or quantum in ways that right now we're sort of analogizing how to use them better for things we currently know how to do. We're going to learn how to do new things that we've never thought about being able to do. And that's what's really exciting, I think, about the future.
Yeah, that's the best part, is learning what you didn't know in the first place.
Yeah, and then solving problems that you never thought you could solve. Because you didn't think of them as problems, because you just thought them as facts of life. And no, they're no longer facts of life. You actually have positive control over changing those situations. So,
Don Blersch is a TechnoMile and SIMS advisory board member. Hey, it was great having you with us today. Some great insight.
Thank you much, Tom. Thank you.
And that's it for this edition of Federal Market Frontlines. In our next episode, we'll speak with Professional Services Council President Stephanie Costro. Until then, I'm Tom Temin.